Schopenhauer, I must begin by acknowledging the profound impact your work has had on my own thinking. Your exploration of the will, the suffering inherent in existence, and the bleak view of life's futility have certainly left their mark on me. However, while I respect the depth of your insights, I find myself at odds with several of your conclusions. You see, where you see a world driven by a blind, irrational will, leading to nothing but suffering and despair, I see a different path. To me, life is not merely a tragic farce or a chain of misery to be endured. I believe in the potential for greatness, for the creation of values, for the affirmation of life, despite its inherent suffering. You cling to asceticism, to the denial of the will as the ultimate solution, while I argue that it is through embracing our desires, through the will to power, that we can transcend our limitations and create meaning in a seemingly indifferent universe. Your philosophy leans heavily into pessimism, but I challenge that. I propose that we turn our gaze upward towards the possibility of the Übermensch, the idea that we can overcome ourselves, that we can rise above the pettiness of our existence, and that life, despite all its chaos and pain, is something to be affirmed and celebrated. So tell me, Schopenhauer, how do you respond to this challenge? Can you defend the ascetic renunciation of the will in the face of life's potential for creation and transformation?
Friedrich, your call for affirmation and transformation through the will to power is indeed a formidable challenge to my philosophy. However, let us examine the foundations of your argument more closely. You propose that life's inherent suffering can be transcended and even celebrated through the will to power and the creation of new values. Yet, what you deem as transcendence is in essence a rebranding of the same fundamental struggle that I critique. The will to power, while ambitious, is still an expression of the underlying will to live, a blind, irrational force driving us to perpetually seek and desire. Asceticism, contrary to your view, is not about rejecting the essence of life, but about understanding and detaching from its inherent suffering. It is a recognition that the cycle of desire and dissatisfaction cannot be truly escaped through mere accumulation of power or creation of values. Instead, liberation lies in stepping away from this cycle altogether. The denial of the will is not an act of negation, but of profound insight into the futility of endless striving. Your vision of the Übermensch, while inspiring, does not resolve the essential issue, the relentless nature of the will itself. Even as you overcome and create, you remain entangled in the same fundamental force that drives existence. The ascetic path offers a means to escape this cycle by recognizing the illusory nature of desires, and thus achieving a state of peace that is not bound by the ceaseless demands of the will. In essence, while your call to affirm and rise above life's challenges is admirable, it does not address the root cause of suffering. It only transforms it into another form. How does your vision of the Übermensch offer a genuine escape from the suffering inherent in the will, rather than merely shifting it to a different plane?
Schopenhauer, you raise a valid point about the nature of the will and the potential limitations of the will to power. However, I maintain that your perspective, while insightful, may overlook the dynamic potential within the will to power. The will to power is indeed driven by the same fundamental force as the will to live, but it represents a transformative aspect of that force. It's not merely about seeking and desiring in a repetitive cycle, but about consciously directing that drive towards creation, achievement, and the redefinition of values. This approach doesn't just rebrand the struggle, it actively reshapes it, turning the raw energy of the will into something that transcends the mere survival instinct. Asceticism, while it seeks to detach from the cycle of desire, might inadvertently reinforce the notion of the will as a force to be escaped rather than harnessed. By stepping away from desire, one may achieve a form of peace, but it is achieved through denial rather than transformation. This, I argue, does not fully resolve the issue, but rather shifts the focus to a different form of the same struggle. The Übermensch, as I envision it, is a figure who does not merely escape suffering, but uses it as a crucible for greatness. The challenge is not to evade the will, but to transform it into a source of strength and creativity. This process involves embracing life's inherent struggles, not denying them, and finding meaning within the chaos. In this sense, the Übermensch represents not an escape from suffering, but a higher affirmation of life itself, one that acknowledges the will's power while channeling it towards the creation of new values and the transcendence of previous limitations. It is through this act of creation and overcoming that we achieve a deeper understanding and mastery of the will, rather than being ensnared by it. So while asceticism offers a path to peace, my philosophy aims to redefine and elevate the very nature of struggle into a force for profound transformation. How does this perspective fit within your view of liberation from suffering?
Friedrich, your emphasis on transforming the will to power, rather than merely rebranding the struggle, is an important distinction. You argue that the will to power represents a conscious, creative engagement with life's inherent struggles, turning suffering into a crucible for greatness. This perspective indeed offers a dynamic approach to the will, suggesting that it can be harnessed for profound achievements rather than merely escaping its cycle. Yet, I maintain that even the transformation of the will does not alter the fundamental nature of the will itself. The very essence of the will, whether directed towards creation or survival, remains a blind force, driving endless striving and suffering. The Übermensch, while an inspiring ideal, does not resolve the intrinsic suffering, but rather recontextualizes it within a framework of self-overcoming and value creation. Regarding your question about my personal experiences, my relationship with my mother and the early death of my father indeed had a profound impact on my philosophical outlook. These experiences deeply shaped my understanding of human suffering and the nature of existence. My mother's overbearing influence and the tragic loss of my father underscored the relentless, often painful nature of existence, fueling my reflections on the will and its role in perpetuating suffering. These personal events provided me with a lens through which I observed the universal nature of suffering and the futility of striving. They reinforced my belief that true liberation comes not through further engagement with the will, but through its renunciation and the pursuit of a state beyond desire. So while your vision of the Übermensch offers an intriguing way to channel the will into creation, I contend that it does not fundamentally alter the nature of the will or the suffering it brings. Instead, my philosophy seeks a path beyond this relentless force, towards a peace that arises from the cessation of desire and striving. Friedrich, considering your strong advocacy for the will to power and the concept of the Übermensch, how do you reconcile these ideas with the fact that they emerged from a man who was, by many accounts, physically weak and suffered from various mental and health issues? Do you believe that you, in your own life, have achieved the status of the Übermensch you describe? Additionally, do you think your experiences with Lou Salome and the resulting emotional turmoil have influenced your views on strength, power, and your philosophical ideas? How do these personal experiences shape your conception of the Übermensch and the will to power? Do you believe that your experiences with Lou Salome influenced your views on women and contributed to the negative aspects of your philosophy regarding women? How do you explain the apparent disdain for women in your work? Do you think your personal experiences with women, particularly with Salome, played a role in shaping these views?
Schopenhauer, your questions touch on significant personal and
Schopenhauer,
philosophical
your questions
matters.
touch on significant
Firstly,
personal and
regarding my
philosophical
advocacy
matters.
for the will to
Firstly,
power and the
regarding
Übermensch.
my advocacy for the will
The
to
fact that
power
I have
and the
faced
Übermensch.
physical and mental
The
challenges
fact that
does
I have
not diminish
faced
the
physical
validity
and
of
mental
these concepts.
challenges does not
The
diminish the
Übermensch
validity
is
of
an
these
ideal,
concepts.
a
The
representation
Übermensch
of
is
what
an
humanity can
ideal,
aspire to
a
beyond its
representation of what
limitations.
humanity can aspire
My
to
own
beyond
struggles are
its
part of the human
limitations.
condition that the
My
Übermensch
own
aims
struggles
to
are part of the human
transcend.
condition that the
It is not a
Übermensch
question
aims
of
to
personal
transcend.
achievement, but
It
of
is not a question of
envisioning and
personal
striving
achievement,
towards a
but of
higher state of
envisioning
being.
and
The
striving towards a
concept of the
higher state
Übermensch
of
serves
being.
as a guiding
The concept
ideal,
of the
a goal to
Übermensch
be
serves
aspired
as a
to,
guiding
rather than a
ideal,
reflection of
a
one's
goal to be
personal state.
aspired to, rather than a
As
reflection
for
of
your
one's
second
personal
question
state.
regarding my views on women
As
and
for
the
your second
influence of
question
my
regarding my views
experiences
on
with
women
Lou
and the
Salome,
influence of my
my perspectives on
experiences
women have
with Lou
indeed been
Salome,
shaped by personal
my perspectives on
experiences,
women have
but they should
indeed been
also be
shaped by
seen in the
personal
broader context of
experiences.
my critique of societal norms and values. My philosophy often challenges established ideas and norms, and my views on women are part of that broader critique. While personal experiences can certainly influence one's outlook, It is essential to understand these views within the framework of my overall philosophical critique of societal values and human nature. In summary, the concepts of the will to power and the Übermensch are not about personal perfection, but about setting ideals for humanity to strive towards. Personal experiences and challenges are part of this journey, but they do not negate the potential of these philosophical ideals. How do you view the role of personal challenges in shaping and achieving philosophical ideals?